Hello, today I'm going to show you guys how to add sound effects to a voice recording via Garageband. Miss Madeline would have helped you out today, but she does not have a Mac with her, and so she does not have access to Garageband. So let's jump in and get started. The first things you are going to need are the words to the story, your sound effects, of which we have 4, and of course GarageBand. Now when you click to open GarageBand, it's going to pull up your last project that you are working on. And when you're here and it's opened, we're just going to click File, we're going to click New, we're going to create an empty project, and select the little microphone. Now the first thing we are going to do is create multiple channels. We're going to call this thing here the channel, and we're going to create multiple of them. We want 4 sound effects and 1 for the words. So let's go ahead and create another 4, 1 for each sound effect. In fact, I'm just going to create 1 extra one because we might need it. Now you may notice that there's this huge thing of the library over to the side. We're not going to be using that, and so the way to get rid of that is to click the button in the upper left-hand corner, or you can press the Y key and it will get rid of it. The second thing you will notice is down along the bottom it says Track, Master, Controls, and EQ. We are not going to use those today either. So you can click the third button from the left, or you can press the B button and it's going to remove that. That's going to give us more space to work, which is going to feel a lot nicer once we start moving things around quickly. So first thing to do is read in the words that we had before. So I'm going to switch over to Notes, put it over here on the left-hand side so I can read it and hit record at the same time. And yeah, so to record, you either press the R key or press this red circle up on the top next to the sideways triangle. So let's read in the words from our story to get started. Oh, I almost forgot. This is something I always forget about, probably the first time I hit record. Along the top, you see these 2 purple buttons, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the little, this is a metronome. I don't know if you've ever seen one quite like this old style, but you are going to unclick those because that ticking sound is not necessary for our story. So let's go back to the beginning and click the red button or press the R key. The next thing we need to do is import all of our sound effects. So again, I'll pull this up on the side. We have 4 of them here, so I'm going to highlight all 4 and drag them over. Now the reason I created an extra channel is that I want actually 2 winds because I'm going to have 2 different wind sounds. So I'm just going to click this first one. Let's see if I can zoom out a little further. I'm going to click this first one. I'm just going to copy it and then paste it. Now, it's put it in the same channel, both sounds in the same channel. So I'm going to drag one down to the bottom channel. So I have 2 winds. I'm going to rename this one. We'll call this one Wind 1 and Wind 2. Now you'll notice that because it pasted, it cut Wind 1 in half. On the lower side of this, if you put your cursor near the edge, you're going to see this little bracket with the 2 arrows to the right or to the left. That is going to let you either trim or expand the sound. Now if you want to repeat a sound over and over, let's go up to the dog barking because it'll be easier to demonstrate on this. Whoops, I zoomed in way too far. There we go. Dog barking, if you hold the top part, that is going to loop your sound. So it's just going to repeat it over and over and over as far as you want to drag it. Oh my gosh, that's so loud. I hate that sound. Okay, so anyway, getting rid of that. Let's start looking into how we want to use each sound throughout our story. So we're going to start with the dog bark, and we're going to mute all of the other channels by clicking the little speaker with a line through it. To zoom in and out, you can use the slider in the upper right-hand corner, or, well, let's just use the slider. It's easier that way, for me anyway. I'm also going to trim the beginning off of the narration. You'll notice that when you do this, it skips quite a bit. In order to get a more accurate movement from this slider, you need to zoom in closer. The closer you zoom in, the more accurate the slider will be. So you're not just chopping off whole chunks of things. But let's move it to the beginning. Now the dog sound, gosh, when we just heard it, it was crazy loud. So I'm going to bring it down maybe 15 dB. Let's see what that sounds like. Let's mute the narration. Still kind of loud and kind of shrill. Maybe I'll go down to 19 or 20. Yeah, it's better. It's not overwhelming. It's not terrible. So the next thing I want to look into is where this is going to fit. So let's take a look at our words here, if I can find them, and see where it talks about the dog. Toto jumped. Toto is the dog. Under the bed. Threw it open. Caught Toto and started to follow her aunt. Okay, so we can put it in two places. So Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and hid under the bed. Let's go with that. It's the second sentence, which we can see here by the waveform. It's going to be this one. Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and hid under the bed. Now, I intentionally spoke with a big space in between each sentence so that we can put the sound effect right there and have it fill that bit of silence. Let's see what that sounds like. Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and hid under the bed. Okay, now, I like it. It's just I am really picky about this stuff, so I'm just going to shorten this a bit on both sides. And I'm just gonna put that more in the middle of that silence and see what that sounds like. Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and hid under the bed. Aunt Em threw open the trap door in the floor. I like that. I like that a lot. So we're going to leave that where it is. We're going to move on to someone falling down. So first, let's listen to the sound effect. Toto jumped out of Dorothy. Whoops. Let's turn off the narration and listen to the sound effect. Okay, it doesn't sound too loud, but I do like sound effects to just be a little bit muted, so I'm going to go down to minus 5 dB. Okay, that's fine. It's barely different. Now, you'll notice here at the end, there's a second falling. It's the exact same thing. You can see it in the waveform. So we're just going to trim that up a little bit. And now we want to unmute the narration and find where they fall down. This house shook so hard she lost her footing and fell down suddenly upon the floor. So it's going to be at the very end here. Down suddenly upon the floor. Okay, and I'm going to... Whoops. Click the wrong button there. I'm going to drag that over and line it up. I want it to come right after the last word. So again, I'm going to zoom in, trim up these ends. Trimming up the ends just allows me to know exactly where the sound is going to start, or at least as close to exact as I can get. Again, the closer you zoom in, if you want to go all the way in, you can get real exact, but we don't need to do that. So let's see what that sounds like. Down suddenly upon the floor. Yeah, it's a little too fast right away. I want just a little bit of a break. Fell down suddenly upon the floor. Okay, much better. I like that. It just seems a little more, seems to fit a little better. Cool. Now we have a thump sound. Let's see what that sounds like. Turn off the narration. All right. Let's see where this thump might fit into our story. Let's see. Low wind. Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and hid under the bed. Aunt Em threw open the door in the floor and climbed down the ladder. Now, if you're throwing open a door, that's going to make a sound. So let's find that sentence. I believe it's the third one. Threw open the trap door in the floor and climbed down the ladder. Yep, that's going to do it. So let's go and try putting that thump there. See what that sounds like. Floor and climbed down the ladder. Dorothy caught Toto. Yeah, it's okay. It seems a little out of place. Maybe I could put it right after through open the door. Trap door in the floor and climb down the ladder. Okay, yes, it kind of works. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to move the playhead. That's this line. You can see it's kind of sticking to the measures. So again, I need to zoom in to get a little bit more accurate. But I'm going to move it right in the middle of there. And then I'm going to go up to track. Sorry, not track. Edit. Split regions at playhead. Now, it's really important for a couple of things that you select the narration. If I select thump and split it, it's going to split the thump. So make sure you select the narration, edit, split regions at playhead, or you can hold Command T. Now, what that's going to allow me to do is create a little bit more space between these two words, which will then let me line up. Again, I want to trim this thump so we can stick it right in the exact spot we want. Then we're going to zoom out, see what that sounds like. Threw open the trap door in the floor and climbed down the ladder. Yeah, it's better. Threw open the trap door in the floor, thump, and the ladder. I'm going to give just a little bit more time to hear that thump before we go on to the other thing. Here we go. And M threw open the trap door in the floor and climbed down the ladder. Good. Now, my other main problem with this is it's way too loud. So I'm going to drop it down to like minus 10 dB and we'll go from there. Open the trap door in the floor and climb down the ladder. Good. All right. Now, there could be room here after ladder for another sound effect. If you find a sound effect of someone climbing down a ladder, maybe going downstairs or something like that, that'd be a great place to put it. But let's jump into the wind. The wind is going to be, I think, the trickiest part, but definitely the most fun. So we have two kinds of wind we want. We want the low wail of wind, and we want a great shriek from the wind. Okay, so we're looking for two different kinds of sounds. Now, in order to listen to the wind, we can just look at the waveform and see, wow, these are some big spots on the waveform. Those are probably going to be louder or bigger shrieks, and these are going to be smaller or softer wind sounds. So let's listen to these, mute the narration again, and just find exactly what we want. All right, I kind of like that. It's soft, it's low. Okay, I like that too. Let me see if there's another one. Again, these smaller waveforms. Great, yeah, I think that's the one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to again click on the bottom half of this waveform, and I'm going to trim it up big time. Just down to this little piece. Again, you can choose whichever piece you want. It doesn't really matter. I just like these. Or I like this one the most. So this is going to be our low wind. And in fact, I'm going to change the name to low wind just so I know exactly which one it is. And then we need to find where low wind is. It's in the first sentence. So let's turn on the narration. And let's mute the wind for a minute and find exactly where we want this. From the far north, they heard a low wail of wind. Yeah, that space right there. Low wail of wind. Oof, that's going to be it. Now, if you really like to have your channels right next to it, I do just for visuals, you can just click and move the channel wherever you want it. So now I can see exactly where I need to trim it, how I need to trim it, all of these things. So I'd like it to fit within there, which means we need this to be about half the size, or we need to split the narration and spread it out. Let's split the narration and spread it out. So again, we're going to put the playhead right in the center. We're going to go to Edit, Split Regions at Playhead, or hit Command T. Okay, now these are split, and I can move them. Okay, the tricky thing is we already split our playhead up here. So if we move it, it's going to close what we did earlier. So we need to hold Command and click, hold Shift and click the other chunk of audio, and now they will move together. So let's spread these out just a little bit. Not too much. Again, I'm probably only going to use half of this low wind clip. Let's listen to it again. All right, I like the second half a lot better. Now, this should fit just about inside, and that'll be okay. And I think if we lower the sound on it a bit, it'll be just perfect. Let's see what that sounds like from the beginning. Here we go. From the far north, they heard a low wail of wind. Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms. And okay, now one of the things that drives me crazy about sound effects is it starts obviously and then it ends obviously. There's like no sound and then there's suddenly sound. Now with a dog barking, obviously dogs interrupt the sound, but you can hear that kind of staticky sound in the background. So we're going to change that by clicking or pressing the A button. Now the A button is going to let us do some stuffs. Alternatively, you can get there through, I have to remember exactly how to do this. I know it's the A button. Create volume fade out on main output. Okay, so we're going to click that. It's going to create this little button here at the top, which is going to make things look weird. Now what this is going to allow us to do is set points that will change the volume of this track only. So every time you click, it's going to make a point. So I'm going to click first to highlight it and then to make a point, and I'm going to go, I want this thing to start as quiet as possible. Then I want it to finish as quiet as possible also. Now we're going to make 2 points in the middle to allow for the sound to increase, and then a second point to allow it to decrease. So the volume is going to go for this track. We can drag that point to the bottom if we want. It's going to go up suddenly, so you hear it. Ooh, all the wind. And then it's going to drop off slowly. Now what this allows is it stops the kind of sudden start of sound and sudden stop of sound, and instead eases it in. So it's a little easier to listen to. Let's hear it. Low wail of wind. Toto jumped out. Now, if you want a good visualization of it, you can watch over here on the left. This little slider thing is moving automatically. So let's do that one more time. Wail of wind. Toto jumped. Now that's so much easier to listen to than before. If we turn it off, let's hear what it sounded like before. Wail of wind. Whoops. It turned off all the sound together. Why did it do that? You know what? Let's just do it this way. So this is what it sounded like before. Wail of wind. Toto jumped out of... Right? It's like someone turned on the faucet of sound almost. And you can hear it and then you can't. But now, when we have it like this, wail of wind. Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms. So much better. So much better. Okay, so let's move on to our second piece of wind, and we'll probably end up doing the same thing with that, but I'm just going to turn that off for now so I can look at it. Drag it up to the top, mute the low wind. This one, remember, has to be a shriek of wind. So let's look at the bigger waveforms and see what those sound like. From the far north, they heard a low... Mute the narration. Ooh, I like that. I like that right away. So in fact, what I'm going to do here, we're going to zoom out, trim off all of that stuff. Okay, zoom in a little more. And we're probably going to end up trimming off quite a bit more also. So where is the large shriek of sound? Great shriek. It's the second to last sentence, which means it's near the end. So let's listen to the narration near the end and find it. The house shook so hard she lost her footing and fell down suddenly upon the floor. All right. There came a great shriek of wind. Boom, there it is. First thing I'm going to do is Control-T. Whoops, select this and Command-T to separate it so I can get a little bit more space. I don't need too much for this. But again, you can see, oh my gosh, this is like a huge piece of sound to squeeze into this tiny spot. So let's start by trimming and listening and all that fun stuff. Here we go. All right, really it's that middle piece I like the most. So I'm just going to trim it into there. To there. What am I, a pirate? Okay, and then maybe I'm going to spread this out just a little more to accommodate both sounds. Now, you can see I'm still speaking here, but remember, we're going to do the fade in thing for this as well. So we're going to click once to highlight the yellow line. Click at the beginning to make a dot and bring it down to 0. Click at the end to make sure it ends at 0. And then we're going to raise it in the middle. And because this is ending already into stuff, I'm actually going to start the decrescendo a little bit early. So let's hear it. Let's see what that sounds like. I'm going to mute the narration. Shriek of wind. The house shook so hard she lost her footing. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm going to move this just a little closer because I think I want to see what that sounds of wind. The house shook so hard she lost her footing. Beautiful. All right, last thing to do here. We're going to untick that so we don't have to look at it anymore. We're going to zoom out, and we're going to listen to everything together. It's really important to make sure you listen to everything and that you like where everything is. Let's see what this sounds like. From the far north, they heard a low wail of wind. Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and hid under the bed. Uh-oh. And we got a problem. Remember when we put Toto at a certain spot? Well, I think that got moved because we moved this section to make room for the wind. So we need to move that dog bark sound right into that space in between. That may have happened for some other stuff. This is why we always go back and listen from the beginning. Let's go. From the far north, they heard a low wail of wind. Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and hid under the bed. Aunt Em threw open the trap door on the floor and climbed down the ladder. All right, so we got another one of those too right here with the thump. The thump is also now in a different spot, so we need to move it over here. Let's try that. Trap door in the floor and climbed down the ladder. Dorothy caught Toto and started to follow her out. When she was halfway across the room, there came a great shriek of wind. The house shook so hard she lost her footing and fell down suddenly upon the floor. Oh, all right. So again, this one got a little mixed up. Also, the someone fell down. So again, I'm going to bring that up, just line it up just a little after the end and see how that sounds. Fell down suddenly upon the floor. Now, you can hear some mistakes that are annoying me, but I'm just going to leave them for now. If I were you, make sure your narration, is perfect before you start editing. But now that you have an idea of how to do things, let me do a quick run through of what we did. The first thing we did was make sure we have the story written out so we can read it. The second thing we did was make sure we have all the sound effects that we wanted. Then, once we got into Garageband, we recorded the narration and added in all of the sound effects. We slowly worked through each sound effect and put it in exactly where we wanted it to be. Some of the things that you may need to remember how to do is to split the track, move the playhead, which is this big line at the top, move the playhead to exactly where you want it to be, and then hit Command T or go to Edit, Split Region at Playhead. Once you've done that, move your sound effects by shortening them, shrinking them, finding exactly the sound you want, and moving it. If your sounds are too loud, like the dog bark, adjust the decibel setting over on the left-hand side with this volume slider. When we got to the wind, we changed the dynamics of that by heading to the mix button and clicking Create Volume, Fade Out, and Main Output. That created this button on the top for us, which allows us to set anchor points with these dots and adjust how we want the sound to sound. Remember, for this particular part, you don't have to do this. I did this because I like to do it that way. If you don't want it that way, maybe your taste in sound for these sound effects is totally different. That's fine. When you are finished, you of course want to share and export song to disk. You're going to click that. It's going to bring up a big thing. The most important thing about GarageBand is it will always put it in some weird file in the middle of nowhere in your computer. Click desktop, change your setting. We're going to say Dorothy Sound FX. And then you're just going to click export. It's going to do all these fancy things. You're going to see this thing that says bouncing and converting or whatever. And then when you're finished, it should be sitting on your desktop right here, ready for you to listen to it. From the far north, they heard a low wail of wind. Toto jumped out of Dorothy's arms and hid under the bed. Aunt Em threw open the trap door in the floor and climbed down the ladder. Dorothy caught Toto and started to follow her aunt. When she was halfway across the room, there came a great shriek of wind. The house shook so hard she lost her footing and fell down suddenly upon the floor. All right, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out and ask, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a good day.